2020 is shaping up to look like an apocalyptic bingo. A global pandemic, the like of which we haven't seen in 100 years or more, is upon us now. Locusts in Africa are swarming and giant hornets are invading the United States. A fire season and hurricane season are soon to start. Is this the end of the world as we know it, or is this just a wake-up call to get prepared for more turbulent times ahead? In January, most of us could have never conceived that we'd soon be experiencing stay-at-home orders, shortages of food, and oil prices that would fall to negative numbers. One way to view this current pandemic is a contagion that weakens our immunity to other potential disasters. It makes us more susceptible to other man-made threats and leaves us more vulnerable to the devastating effects of natural disasters. The tipping point to a catastrophic level event is really the compounding effect of more than one or more events. A cyber attack or earthquake during a pandemic where things are already on edge could create a tipping point, resulting in riots, looting, civil unrest, martial law, amongst other potential issues. So it's important to really have a threat assessment of the major threats potentially right over the horizon. Prepping comes down to prepping for the possible and prepping for the probable. There's so many possibilities of things that could happen. Unless you're off the grid with a bunker and clean water supply and food supplies, you can't even really be fully confident you're adequately prepared. If you're prepping in an urban or suburban environment, there are many things you could do to become self-reliant when one of these 10 threats becomes a catastrophic reality. Even a little preparedness in advance of one of these threats positions you better to survive. In this two-part video series, I'll review 10 of the most significant threats to our safety and survival at present. In part 1 of the series, we'll look at disasters of nature, those that occur because we live on this planet, and in the second part, we'll examine threats that are man-made. Often, the human-made anthropogenic threats stem from natural disasters. As I've said, the compounding effect of one or more of these events can aggregate a larger and more deadlier time. Knowing your area will determine what is more probable for you. Those are always the immediate threats you should prepare for. The possible or the secondary threats you face. They are worth preparing for, but what you'll find is that preparing for the probable prepares you also somewhat for the possible. In this video, the first in the series, we'll look at the Earth-centric disasters we face and how to prepare for them. These are the disasters from nature that we cannot prevent. These disasters range from the common, like floods, fires, tornadoes, to the less common, until today, like pandemics and food shortages. On most of the threats we'll discuss, there's already another video I've created over the years. I'll provide links out to those, and you can subscribe to and search this channel for a more in-depth analysis of those topics and detailed instructions on how to survive them. I'll try to provide a high-level overview so I can cover all 10 of the major and most urgent threats. Number 1, natural disasters. The biggest and most probable threat that we face is natural disasters. These are catastrophic events that we can't really prevent or avoid while we're living here on Earth. The best we can do is prepare for them. Fires, floods, earthquakes, hurricanes, tornadoes, tsunamis, blizzards, volcanic eruptions, and cyclones are the types of natural disasters that can affect our way of life. It's important that we properly prepare for these disasters to ensure our survival when they occur. It's crucial to remember that natural disasters are largely locally specific. The state of California, for example, is very prone to earthquakes and wildfires, while the state of Florida is prone to hurricanes. Knowing which natural disasters are prone to occur in your area is critical to your preparation. This will help you prepare first for the disaster that is more likely to happen in your area. It's a good thing that the basics of preparation are the same regardless of the disaster. You'll need to store enough food for you and your family, have water for drinking and cleaning, and a first aid kit to deal with simple illnesses or injuries. You will also need to have a bug-out bag ready for you and your family in case you have to evacuate your home. Once you're done with the basics, it's time to get more specific with your preparations. This is where it's important to know which natural disaster is prone to happen in your area. If you're like me in California, which is prone to wildfire and earthquakes, there are some things you need to do. To help you prepare for wildfires, you need to ensure your home is also protected by creating a defensible space. It's a space around your home that will act as a buffer between your house and the surrounding environment. Earthquakes are another disaster you will have to deal with if you again live in California. Though it's impossible to prevent your home from getting destroyed, you can at least prepare so it won't cause additional danger to you and your family. One of the things you can also do is fasten or secure heavy items like refrigerators, TV sets, and shelves. Wherever you live, you should sign up for local texts or email alerts that warn you when a storm is coming. You also need to monitor local news and weather reports so you're informed at all times. I've already done in-depth videos on how to prepare for wildfires, earthquakes, and hurricanes, and I'll put a link to those videos in the description section below. Number 2, pandemics. Another threat that we're facing right now is a pandemic. I did 2 separate videos last fall on the global threat we face from pandemics and how to prepare for them. The concerns I mentioned in the video unfortunately have turned into reality with the coronavirus pandemic hitting the world. This pandemic has brought the world to a screeching halt, disrupting businesses, the economy, and our normal way of life. As the death toll for the coronavirus pandemic continues to rise, more and more people are starting to realize that, 1, the threat of pandemics are real, and 2, a little preparation can be the difference between barely surviving and thriving. Subsequent waves of this pandemic are inevitable. Social distancing, the wearing of masks, and even how and when we gather will all be forever changed as a result of this current pandemic. Despite the devastating effects of the coronavirus, many experts believe that the long-term effects are still unknowable. Until the right medicines are determined for treatment, vaccines with some effectiveness are created, and some herd immunity is developed, the pandemic will continue to hammer away at our world. To prepare for this threat, one of the first things you need to do is ready your home. Similar to how most governments reacted to the coronavirus pandemic, an order to stay at home will be given. So you need to better prepare to be in your home for an extended period of time, especially if it's going to be a prolonged quarantine order. With the lessons of social distancing, hand washing, and how viruses spread, make sure you have some basic supplies on hand for the future, like bottles of isopropyl alcohol for sterilizing things, and now the ubiquitous face mask. The video I did about pandemics provides detailed steps on how you can prepare. I'll post a link in the description section below if you want to check that out. Number 3, climate change. Climate change is an increasing threat we face now and in the immediate future. Now, I'm not here to take a stand in regards to climate change, nor am I going to argue one way or another whether climate change is caused by any sole combination of factors. Those things really don't matter, especially when we're talking about prepping for continued climate fluctuations. What's important to consider is that facts and science are showing that the climate is indeed changing. Yes, I understand climate change is not new, and it will continue to change in the future. But what's alarming is the unprecedented scale at which the climate is changing. Its impact can be seen on the increase in the frequency of severe storms. 6 of the 7 wettest storms, for example, in the last 120 years have occurred in the past 2 decades, and they don't see this trend changing anytime soon. Warmer oceans combined with the slower moving or stalled cyclones are the reasons for the increase in storm frequency and intensity. This can cause sea levels to rise, which can have extended and devastating results. From excessive rains in traditionally dry areas to cold weather in what should have been warm weather times, the agricultural industry and your food supply chain is the most vulnerable to the effects of climate change. The greatest survival skill in a prepper's arsenal is gardening and foraging knowledge. Reducing your dependence on reliable food sources minimizes the threat of climate change on your food supply, which brings us to our 4th immediate threat, food shortages. Number 4, famines and food shortages. The coronavirus pandemic has greatly exposed the fragility of our food supply. The issue is not that our farms are running out of supplies, they're running out of labor because of COVID-19. Tyson Foods and Smithfield Foods, 2 of the biggest meat producers in the United States, and other similar companies have stopped operations on plants where workers have tested positive for the virus. Dairy producers have been forced to dump thousands of gallons of milk since they couldn't sell in their established markets. With schools closed, namely elementary schools, demand for cheese and milk has also decreased. The economic weakness of big export markets like China also have resulted in a decrease in milk exports, further intensifying the dairy producers' problem with the surplus of goods. But that's just the tip of the iceberg. Aside from slashing imports, countries are also closing their borders because of the coronavirus pandemic, further disrupting the global food supply. To prepare for the looming food shortage, you should have 2 to 3 months of an emergency food supply at minimum. Some would say 6 to 12 months. You never really know how severe or how long this catastrophe could be. So preparing for the worst can ensure you and your family's survival. You should stock up on foods that are easy to cook and have a long shelf life. I've covered the detail in food shortage problems in one of my videos. I also have quite a few videos on what foods to make sure you have in your prepper inventory. I encourage you to check those out to understand the signs you need to look for when it comes to food shortages. Again, I'll post a link in the description section if you want to check out those videos. Number 5, civil unrest, martial law, civil war, and revolution. The coronavirus pandemic may just be the beginning of a bigger threat. The situation has sent up a number of red flags. And although there hasn't been any large-scale looting or martial law, the government has already ordered its citizens to self-quarantine and stay at home. When a population becomes too restless or feels they're not treated fairly, civil unrest it can actually occur. Already, small pockets of people under the auspices of freedom are ignoring and protesting against the self-quarantining measures. Remember, a society thrives when it acts in unity against an enemy, and divided people are easily conquered. Currently, the number of protesters is just a small percentage of the population, but it's not hard to see many more Americans become restless if there is no clear ending in sight for the quarantine period. Should this happen, civil unrest will likely take place to larger degrees. The natural government response is to declare martial law and to restore order. Not everyone, though, will agree to this declaration, which can further cause a divide in our country. As states take sides, it's not completely impossible to imagine that a civil war or revolution could take place. People will lose faith in the government and start taking matters into their own hands. You can learn more about the possibility of martial law and civil war happening in our country and what you can do to prepare from videos on this channel. Again, I'll post links in the description section below. The devastating effects of the coronavirus pandemic continue to plague the world, but this is only the beginning. There are still many threats that can affect us in the immediate future. The biggest and most probable threats we will face immediately are natural disasters, continued pandemics, climate change, famines, and food shortages, and civil unrest, martial law, and even the possibility of civil war. 3 months worth of food or sources of stored clean water can prepare you to survive both probable and possible threats that become catastrophic, global changing events. Think of the probable and the possible in terms of time as well. Hurricanes are probable if you live in certain regions like the southeast United States. They will occur yearly. And yes, while the Earth getting struck by a comet or a volcano suddenly erupting, like the now dormant Yellowstone caldera, might be things you want to consider as probable, they may not happen in your children, or their children's lifetimes. You could spend for hours on the possible, so always make sure you're focusing on the probable and adjusting your inventory and plans appropriately. In part 2 of this video series, we'll discuss 5 more immediate threats, the man-made kind, and what you need to prepare for. If you found this video useful, please click on the like button, share on social media, and provide some feedback in the comments section below. I always enjoy hearing from the community and learning what you have to say. As always, be safe out there.